When news broke that the cheater's website, Ashley Madison, had been hacked, exposing the data of over 37 million users, panic ensued and shame was felt across North America. Today, Context investigates shame and shock culture. Well, imagine you turn on your computer, decide to surf the net, and discover you are being publicly shamed. And that was the case for Ruby Rocks, who joins us from Vancouver. Hello, Ruby.
Hello.
Wow, Project Harpoon, even their name sounds sinister to me. What happened to you in this internet shaming world?
What happened was a page came up on Facebook called Project Harpoon, and you're right, just the name in itself is completely offensive. And what they were doing was taking pictures of plus-size models, such as myself and other actresses, and just everyday women who are plus-size, and photoshopping them down to look much, much thinner. The link originally got passed on to me through my Facebook page. One of my followers saw it and thought that I wouldn't be okay with that. And so I went on the page and I noticed all these pictures and the nasty comments and horrible captions that were being made along them, and they were shaming these women for how they looked. And
I think this is despicable.
Absolutely it is.
Okay, how did it make you feel, though?
When I first saw it, I'd kind of laughed because the photoshopping was so horribly done. They made me look completely unnatural. I'm not a size 2 naturally. I'm not that body shape. I never have been. I never will be. And they made me look so tiny, and so it just looked completely unnatural. Being a model in the industry, I'm constantly told things about myself, like that I need to look different, or that's just part of the industry. So I have a bit of a thick skin, I can take it. But what concerned me is the message that it was sending out into the world, that we need to look a certain way, an idealized form, to be considered beautiful, and that the way we are naturally is not okay unless you look like a certain type.
Okay, and so how did you respond, Ruby? How did you fight back?
First, I shared the image and asked in help getting it reported and getting the page removed. And then it went viral. Everybody was just horrified with this page. And it got shared by all of my friends, all of my family. And then it sort of started making its way onto media platforms, talking about how horrible this was. But really all that did was gave it more attention. It gave the page more attention, and their likes continued to grow from people who I guess have small minds, narrow minds, who can't see the beauty in everyone. And that was not what I wanted. I didn't share the page with intent to give them more publicity. I wanted it to be taken down. So then what I decided to do is write a blog about it. I didn't want people to think that reading these comments and these captions and looking at these photos, that it was okay to get away with this. I know they say don't feed the trolls and ignore the bullies, but I felt like if I was ignoring it, then I was just adding to the problem.
Because your feelings were hurt also,
They
right?
were. Absolutely, they were.
And so did Project Harpoon apologize?
No, I've never heard a word from them.
Wow. But your blog has been successful in getting them taken down, hasn't it?
Yes. Well, the original pages, the original pages got taken down. They keep popping up, new pages. Every time an old one gets taken down, they'll post a new page. But they're not getting nearly as the attention that they were before, which is great.
Okay, what did you learn about shaming in this internet culture, and is there any solution to it?
Well, the way I see it, I've been trolled, I've been shamed. That's what I get for being a model, and that's unfortunately the society that we live in. And people are going to say nasty things. That's just unfortunately the way we live. I think that the culture is becoming more accepting of people in their true forms and the way that they're healthy and happy, and I think that that's wonderful. However, there are people out there with small minds who think you need to be a Victoria's Secret model to be beautiful. And yes, they're beautiful, but there are many more forms of beauty out there. So I just felt that I have a thick skin, I can take it if people tell me things that they don't like about me. I can handle it. But there's a lot of girls out there. I was getting messages on my fan page reading comments this page is made and saying, you know, I'm sitting here in tears reading comments about you and other girls that look like me, and they're saying these about you, and so I can only imagine what they'd say about me. So I wrote the blog, and I fought them, not necessarily for me. It hurt my feelings. I wanted them to take it down. But I did it for the people who don't have a voice and who don't have as thick a skin as me. And I just think cyberbullying, unfortunately, is not going anywhere. But we need to call people out and let them know that what they're doing is wrong and help those affected by cyberbullying and by bullying in general.
All right. Ruby Rocks from Vancouver, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care.
Thank you, you too.
And now over to Sheldon Neal with Fast Facts.
Thank you so much, Lorna. Ashley Madison is an online site that encourages its users to have an affair. Now, imagine this. In a blink of an eye, 37 million Ashley Madison user accounts were breached and personal information released by hackers. The fallout of this has led to marriages turned upside down, suspected suicides linked, and several class action lawsuits made against Avid Life Media, owners of the website. Now, after the news of the breach, Avid Life Media offered, get this, a $500,000 reward for information that could lead to the hackers' arrest. Ashley Madison CEO Noel Biederman has stepped down as Chief Executive Officer. Now, lessons learned from this historic breach is constantly evolving, but perhaps the most shocking of revelations. Ashley Madison, the TV show? Yes, perhaps. Producers are working on the project, and it's now under the tentative title, get this, Thank You, Ashley Madison. Producers say it will be a scripted series inspired by the site.
Dr. Margaret Paul is a clinical psychologist and the co-founder of Inner Bonding, a spiritual therapeutic technique and an approach to help people heal from shame. And Margaret joins us now from Skype in Colorado. Thank you for being with Context.
It's my pleasure, Laura.
So when this awful Ashley Madison news broke and just the ripple effect it had, what was your impression?
You know, I felt very sad for these people. I have a lot of compassion for them because I see something like that as an addiction. And addiction is anything that we do to avoid responsibility for our feelings. And so turning to having affairs is like any other addiction. It's a way that people avoid taking care of themselves. And you know, the problem is, and this is what inner bonding is about, is that most people have never learned how to take responsibility for themselves, for their feelings, how to learn to love themselves. And so when they don't know how to do that and they have a lot of intense feelings, they turn to externals, and that is one of the things that they turn to. And I think it's very sad for these people.
And as we were researching you, I saw your interview with Alanis Morissette. You are a therapist to our wonderful Canadian icon. And you guys have talked about that a lot, taking care of yourself so you don't spiral in shame, which is what is happening in the Ashley Madison fallout. Talk to us about why that's so important, taking care of yourself.
When we, you know, think about having a little child. And if you don't take loving care of that child, then that child feels abandoned. And then that child goes out and tries to get it elsewhere and gets addicted to, you know, being good or being nice or getting approval. And this is what happens for us, is that when we don't know how to take loving care of ourselves, loving care of our feelings, we turn to various things, food, alcohol, drugs, sex, pornography, whatever, in order to fill up the emptiness that we feel when we are abandoning ourselves. And
I just want to unpack what I think is kind of complicated about the whole shame guilt thing. And that is, you know, you've got both going here, because like shame is what matters, what other people will think about me. And then guilt is, why do I feel rotten about this inside myself? What's the roadmap to relief?
Well, see, the feeling of being worried about what other people think is really a projection of what we think of ourselves. And so the roadmap back is to start to tune into one's own self-judgments, because those self-judgments are like background noise with a lot of people. You know, if we treated others as badly as we treat ourselves, with that level of self-judgment, others would not want to have anything to do with us. And sometimes people do, which is why their relationships don't work. And so the way back is to tune in to how harshly they're judging themselves, because that's what's really causing the shame and the guilt that's going on inside.
I've really needed, the idea of being forgiven. And I found that in Jesus. Is forgiveness of self and such an important part of the journey to healing?
Well, it is, but it's not something that we can kind of legislate. Forgiveness comes when we go inside and we understand our fears and our beliefs with a lot of compassion. We understand that we were doing what we were doing not because we wanted to hurt ourselves or others, but because we're coming from that emptiness inside. And as we come to see where we got that, we naturally forgive ourselves. And when we do that, then we can reach to our higher source. We can reach to God and realize that that forgiveness has always been there.
Well, Dr. Paul, I have never had Skype therapy before. I didn't even know you could do it, but I get it. I see how it would work. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, and take care.
All right. Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now it's your turn in the studio audience. And Sheldon, what have you got for us?
Thank you so much, Lorna. We're going to take a quick poll of everyone in here. Hearing about all the news of Ashley Madison and the fallout, when you first heard about the news breaking, show of hands, how many were shocked, you could say? You were shocked by the news. Perhaps you were not shocked, show of hands, Hey. And perhaps you never heard of the story. You're just like, Ashley, who? Is that my... Very good, very good. And we have someone here, Lorna, who is actually going to share some of her views. What did you feel like when the news broke? What went through your mind?
Well, at first, when I first heard about Ashley Madison, I was surprised that married people would actually sign up for it. And then when I heard about the news about a listing of people that were on it, like politicians, church leaders, and that sort of thing, especially Duggar from 19 Kids and Counting, that was a big surprise to me.
Very good.
Okay, well, listen, Sheldon, thank you, and thank you, everybody. Next, an incredible story of shame launched our next guest on a career path to help young adults see new beginnings. Sheldon Neal sits with Jamie Twarkowski next. We're back looking at the shock of having to deal with shame. And Sheldon Neal brings us an interview with Jamie Twarkowski, the author of If You Feel Too Much.
Thinking of Ashley Madison and the hack revealing, emails of more than 30 million potential users suddenly put in the spotlight, what was your first response upon hearing of this story?
Man, I mean, certainly surprised, certainly shocked. And, in a way, it's fascinating because I'm not a fan of the site, and it's really heartbreaking that it exists and that it's as popular as it is. But it didn't really hit close to home, or I didn't really have a kind of the perspective I have now until I was with a friend 2 days ago in Florida who lives in New Orleans, and without sharing too much, there was a friend there, an older married man whose name was on that list, and he took his life because of it. And so I got to talk to my friend about what it was like for his community to walk through losing someone who, as a result, I think felt that shame and felt like it was too far gone. 2 unconfirmed suicides were linked to the Ashley Madison breach. These cases, you can imagine, it must be people perhaps, dealing with such immense pressure, guilt, suicidal thoughts will, of course, lead into this unfortunate end. How should society respond to people whose life was once private but now thrusted into the public life? How should society respond? Man, I think it's hard to know how to respond because it's such a unique situation. It's like straight out of a movie to imagine. I think it's this, for the people on that site, I imagine there was a level of guilt there, but for them it felt like a secret that was somehow safe in a way. And obviously, instantly that changed for all of them. thousands of, I don't even know how many, but thousands. So I've never seen anything like it, but I think, hindsight is 2020. So sure, I understand, hey, you should have been faithful to your wife. Absolutely. Like we'd all agree with that. But only when you hear these other stories. I heard something like 400 pastors had to resign. Do you back up and realize there's more to it than just that first reaction?
What do you understand about the dynamics of shaming? Because I know you have a personal kind of connection to that in what you deal with. What's your connection?
I think that when it comes to our pain, we tend to isolate. I think even when it comes to depression specifically, so many people struggle alone. We've learned that 2 out of 3 people who struggle with depression, they never get help for it and essentially never take the first step. And I think it points to that shame and stigma that so many people feel isolated and feel like I'm the only one who feels this way, I'm the only one who behaves this way. I certainly can't share it. I would be met with judgment, I would be misunderstood, I'd be labeled. If I'm a young person, they might send me home. And so I think there's a lot of lies that come with this word shame.
Do you think the rise of social media makes shaming that much more prevalent and easy to indulge in?
I think, again, it's easy to say anything online and not give it much thought and not have much grace, and you're not really going to have to deal with the fallout. You can type a quick, ugly sentence or two and not really have to deal with the consequences of how that makes someone else feel, or even not remember that there's a human being on the other end of that exchange. I'm in a unique position because I get to see the best of it. We hear a lot about the worst of it, cyberbullying, things like that. To Write Love on Our Arms, we literally grew out of the best of it, of people using the internet and social media for good, to talk about things they believe in, to break the silence around things people don't talk about. So I try to acknowledge both sides, but at the same time be grateful that we get to see, even if it's a smaller percentage, the possibility for good there as well.
Well, Jamie, sometimes we can feel just really bad about something we've done, something we've been a part of. What do we do about that feeling? How do we deal with that?
I think we can't do it alone. So I think, we use this phrase all the time, people need other people, and we really believe that. You hope for everyone a support system, a community, a group of friends, even starting with one friend that you can be honest with, that you can be vulnerable, that you can even fall apart with. And beyond that, there's times that we need more than our friends can offer. We need a different level of wisdom or perspective, and so we constantly point to professional help, specifically counseling. There's a lot of easy examples or comparisons. If your car is having trouble, you take it to an expert. If you break your arm, you get to the hospital. If you're sick, you go to the doctor. And yet when it comes to something like depression or addiction or thoughts of suicide, for some reason we forget that it could be treated the same way, that my mind is vital to me and to my life and my existence, and sometimes I need to go talk to an expert.
Well, if Sheldon and Jamie discuss some of the theory of Christian care around shame recovery, our next guest knows what it is to put into practice the hard work of overcoming personal shame. Please welcome Pollyanna Reed to Context. Thank you, Pollyanna. And it's terrific to have you back. And I'm sorry, not exactly the calling card everyone wants on national television is shame recovery. But,
Yes.
I've been sharing your links with girls I know. I love what you're doing. I love your book. And it hasn't always been the motivational speaker, great life, successful mentoring coach that you are. You've got a full-time business helping people just become all God intended them to be.
Absolutely.
But let's go way back.
Okay.
Let's talk about how this began for you. What happened in your life that would have put you on a path that was so disappointing?
Well, I've experienced quite a traumatic childhood that I covered up with a smile. Every day I would wake up, hoping to die when, and I would go into the public just with, a mask on. And many people didn't know what I was going through. When I was younger, I was sexually abused at 13. I experienced severe bullying in elementary school and high school. And I got pregnant at a young age and had an abortion. There was just a lot of twists and turns in my life that many people didn't know. And so carrying that emotional baggage was very difficult for me moving forward into becoming a woman.
And can you remind us how powerless a young teen feels when she's being bullied, when she's raped, when all of this?
Well, essentially, you feel alone. You don't feel as if you can approach anyone because you're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of how people will think of you. You know, we live in a society where, you know, people are chasing perfection. And I felt voiceless. I did not feel like I could approach anyone with what I was going through out of, you know, just shame and just feeling guilty of my actions.
And here's one complicated wrinkle in your story. Your dad is a pastor. And unfortunately, that means they have expectations on pastors' kids. You're supposed to be as perfect as dad and mom are.
Right.
How did you feel about those kind of pressures?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a two-parent home, and, you know, me and my siblings, we had to, you know, walk a straight line, and, you know, we did have our pressures, but I just felt like I could not talk about certain topics within my home because it was looked down upon, or, you know, I probably shouldn't have explored that, you know, that circumstance to begin with. So I didn't want to go to my parents out of fear of what they would think of me. I didn't want them to feel that I disgraced the family name.
And what did you do about God? Because all of this God conversation is going around you. You're in church every Sunday, and yet you've got this incredibly painful life.
Well, there are times where I felt as if he abandoned me, as if he didn't see me or hear me. I would pray to God, but oftentimes I just didn't feel like he was listening. I would ask myself, like, why am I going through these circumstances? Why am I feeling betrayed and rejected? What did I do to deserve it? But only now am I starting to realize that, you know, I feel like God handpicked me to go through my mess because he knew I was capable of rising up with an even powerful message.
Because when you went off to college, you had
Depression.
and suicide attempts.
Right.
Could anything have stopped that dark spiral?
Well, you know what? I feel like everyone deep down inside is facing their own private battle. And a lot of times we miss those signs. You know, whether we have a friend or a family member who's looking off or, you know, feeling down. A lot of times we don't just ask a simple question, how are you? How are you feeling today? And if someone says the F word, fine, we just, you know, kind of brush it off. But really they're not feeling fine. And I was covering up everything with a smile. And in my second year, I tried to attempt suicide twice, and I had 2 failed attempts. And I believe that was God speaking to me, really letting me know that I had a greater purpose for my life. So from that point forward, I really, you know, I was determined to find out what that purpose was.
Okay, so tell us the journey out. Tell us how you found a happier beginning.
Well, you know what? I think the first step was raising my hand and asking for help. I approached my doctor and I told him, I need something. I need you to recommend something, give me medication, do something, because I don't know what to do. I can't do this by myself. So I went to my doctor first and foremost. Second of all, I started praying to God more than ever, and I would hold his hand tighter each and every day, you know, because without him, I don't know where I'd be. He spared me twice, and I feel like that's something very miraculous.
Pollyanna Reed is a great motivational speaker, author of the book Everything I Couldn't Tell My Mother. And it is our pick for Lorna's books this week. And so just go to the website and click on Lorna's books, and you can have a chance to win a free copy, which Pollyanna has so kindly left a few with us. After the break, what I learned in my interview with the founder of Ashley Madison. That insight next. I met Noel Biederman when he launched the slogan, "Life is short, have an affair." At the time, he told me he'd be devastated to find his own wife following his advice. Well, as AshleyMadison.com sold its affairs, devastation is everywhere. And in the wake of that, theologian Ed Stetzer posted this: "Life is eternal. Don't have an affair." It's a better slogan because it reminds us of one reason why we want to be good. It's the way God wired us to be. God creates good, and at our core, we hope to be known as a good person. But it's not easy. Because we belong to an eternal God, there is recovery. God gave us Jesus as our Savior to do that repair work, and at the end of our life, God says we will be judged for our actions. And I need my connection to Jesus for course corrections, daily, even hourly. And we're called to the way of Jesus no matter what our mistake. At some point, the light bulb goes on and you say, I have to start this. Jesus, I need you to run my life. Peace and forgiveness is not something we generate by ourselves. It comes from God. And we've left some excellent spiritual resource tools on our web episode for you to check this all out. And we do answer all our mail. If you have a story to share or you need a link to recovery, write to us at contextwithlorna.com. You can do it by email or our street address that's up on the site. For all of us at Context, I'm Lorna Duick. Thank you for watching. Thanks, everybody.
Why is heaven hitting the movies again? I guess we just love the hope of stories like the one covered in 90 Minutes in Heaven, where a man dies in a horrific car crash only to come back to life 90 minutes later, claiming to have seen heaven. Well, we sat down with the couple behind the true story, Don and Eva Piper. Take a look.
The car is crushed.
Yes.
What happens?
I took my last breath on the bridge and my next breath at the gates of heaven. I was killed instantly. The paramedics tried to do everything they could for me to try to revive me, resuscitate me. They were unsuccessful in spite of their best efforts. So the body was covered up with a waterproof tarp because it was raining and they didn't want anybody to see me. It was quite gruesome. I had lost my left leg and this arm was in the back seat of the car. I'd been impaled on the steering wheel and I had brain damage. Eva still thinks I have brain damage.
Well, for more web-exclusive content, head to contextwithlorna.com, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook at Context TV.